back now. So our session today, as you see in the poster, is opportunities outside academia. We have some resource persons today to discuss on this topic. So we are looking at the impact that academic researchers could make in the larger society, not restricting themselves to only university work and research. We believe that their skill sets are suitable for so many problems that we have in society, and they could actually use these skill sets to solve a lot of problems that we face, and also solve their own problems, especially financial ones. They could use their skills to earn more than they are earning as university academicians. And especially in this time in Nigeria where lecturers are on strike, we hope the universities reopen soon. But in case if the strike lingers for a very long time, then it's an opportunity to use your skills for something else. Similarly, even if you don't teach in the university, you have masters, you have learned some skills, and you're looking for a university job, this session, inshallah, will try to provide you with other ways of earning income, or information about other ways of earning income, how you can utilize your skills in other aspects that are not university related. So our two research persons today are Dr. Sadiq Sani and Dr. Khalil Muhammad. Dr. Khalil Muhammad is coming back. He was here actually in one of our previous meetings, and he's coming back again today to contribute. Dr. Sadiq Sani works with British Telecommunications, which is a company that, an internet company or mobile telecom operator in the UK. He has over a decade's experience in data science, AI, and machine learning across both academia and industry. Dr. Sadiq has a broad interest in different aspects of machine learning, including active and continuous learning, self-supervised learning, privacy preserving machine learning, anomaly detection, and other areas of machine learning. And he has worked in many applications in areas such as healthcare, cybersecurity, conversational agents, and so on. Dr. Khalil Muhammad is also a data scientist at Conjura. He's based in Ireland. I think you need to mute some of our participants. So yeah, Dr. Khalil Muhammad is a data scientist at Conjura. He earned his PhD from University College Dublin and had worked as postdoctoral research fellow in collaboration with Samsung. His research interests includes recommender systems, deep machine learning, and federated learning. He has worked in multiple roles in the software industry, leading teams working on business critical products. He was former CTO and a founding technical hire in a startup. So these are our two resource persons for today. From our own side, my co-convener is Dr. Yusuf Sani. He will participate in moderating this session today. Dr. Yusuf Sani works at Xperi, and he's based in Ireland as well. And then myself, Musab Isa, I am an assistant professor at the University of Afro-Albertan, and I am based in Saudi Arabia. Without further ado, I will ask the speakers to go ahead and present their sessions. I don't know who is starting. Is it Khalil or Sadiq? I don't know how you guys have organized it.
I'm happy to start, if that's okay with Sadiq.
Okay, so our sessions usually last for between 1 hour and 1 hour 30 minutes. And we would like to give more time for question and answers. So maybe the presentations could be for 20 minutes from you, and then 20 minutes from Sadiq. And then we will use the remaining time for question and answers, and also follow-up comments either from you or from the moderators or from the attendees in this program. So go ahead and start, Dr. Tabitha. So, sorry, Dr. Khalil, before you start, someone says my audio is poor, but is it for him only, or can the rest of you hear me quite well?
You're clear. I think
I hear you loud and clear.
Something to do with his settings.
With the settings, okay. So I think Nasarawa, you need to adjust your audio system. Perhaps that's where the problem is.
Okay, so can you see my screen? No?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, I'll try again. Okay. How about now?
Yep.
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can see some.
Okay, Grant. So Assalamu alaikum and good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. So what I want to do, hopefully, is to give a few ideas inspired by my journey from academia to outside academia. And essentially, I have had a very strange and peculiar career so far, which makes me, I would say, a good speaker for this topic. I did start my career as an entrepreneur or a freelancer. That's a modest way of saying it. And then eventually jumped into being employed as a software developer and jumped to being a university lecturer for a while. So I'm one of most of you. And then eventually jumped into research, and now I'm a data scientist. So what you would find with this journey is that transition is nothing new to me, and transition is very important. And when I say transition, I mean moving from where you are, whether in terms of industry or in terms of sorry, just background noise. Yeah, whether moving from one industry to the other, or even staying within the same industry but changing job roles such that what you do in the past is different from what you're doing at present. And transition is quite important. I remember in 2009 or 2008, very early on, I was attending a career talk at the time, and the presenter at the time said that it's now uncommon to find people that would stick to one job from the start of their career to the end. This used to be the norm if you go back to 1950s, 60s, and 70s, because, you know, that's how life was then. But more and more, it's becoming more common to find people by the time they get to their mid-age, when I talk about 40s and 50s, they would have switched jobs up to 5 times. And that is the new norm. So interestingly, you find many people tend to think that sticking to where you were and kind of growing, finishing, getting your pension would be the most ideal way. But increasingly, we can see that that's not happening. So transition is quite good, and it's natural, in fact, especially for those of us that are in academia. So I have no idea what the ratio is between those that are current lecturers, those that are postgraduate students, and those that are just attending. But I will try to make my examples as broad and generic as possible so that it applies to whatever condition you're facing, or whatever situation is at the moment. If you do have any questions with regards to trying to tailor this to your specific situation, we can talk about it afterwards. But in general, the idea is from academia to any other place. It could be industry, but it will also be within academia. But as long as you're jumping from one set of a job that requires one set of skill set to another, this is what I'm talking about. So why do you want to transition from academia in general? There are many reasons why people transition. You will have to find your own reason why you want to transition. And once you find those reasons and they are compelling enough, I would advise that you just take the leap. Now, these reasons could be broad, and in most cases, these reasons are relative or comparative in nature. So you look at where you are at the moment. Many of you are on compulsory leave right now due to the strike, right? So there are things like that that could upset you and make you want to transition. That's one reason. But it's just also that assuming things were quite good, you would find often that in academia, you're stuck to a few rigid research interests. So you cannot be interested in cybersecurity, interested in machine learning, interested in semantic web, interested in natural language processing. It's impossible because it's something that has to do with knowledge and the few resources you have in terms of brain matter and time. So you tend to narrow it down to a very small subset of topics that you specialize in, and that would be your research interest. Now, if you spend enough time doing those research topics, eventually what happens is you get bored and you start to look for new ideas. And even within that area, you become so narrow in the research aspect that you're doing that you become almost insignificant. And there are, exceptions to this, but if you look at the parallel world, on the other side of the fence in industry or in a different setting beyond academia, you would find that every now and then you're exposed to a variety of problems. And this is because the problems you solve are not dictated by your research interests, but by whatever brings in money or whatever, helps whomever is funding that industry. Now, that seems a little scary when you think about it, but if any of you speaks Hausa, I think there's a common saying, Zamawajeta Hazariko or something like that. I can't remember. But it's good to have this variety, it's a spice of life. So industry gives you that. Today you're solving this problem, you get satisfaction, you jump to the next one. And in academia, it would be that most of the stuff you talk about will be theoretical. And that serves as a safe haven for us because to a certain extent, you don't have to think about how you apply the knowledge you do. And if you're an imposter, you can just, you feel that you have that imposter syndrome thing working for you. You could stick within the realms of theory and not imagine beyond theory how your knowledge could be useful. But in industry, you'd see most of your contributions are measured. And in that case, whatever knowledge you provide has to be put into practice. And then there's growth again. Many of you would be stuck in your current jobs, or if you're still a postgraduate student, you're stuck, gathering more ebooks, gathering more Coursera courses because you think that knowledge enough is what moves you forward in your career. And this is the academic thinking. But then you have students who have graduated earlier on who didn't go through that knowledge path and are now, solving big problems, working for the government or making millions, and you're stuck there. All these things, but you're not growing. So this dissatisfaction keeps eating into your life, causing you to decay and wither, and eventually you're nothing, because you just don't have an environment where you grow and get real satisfaction from it. In industry, you'd see that whatever skills you have, as long as you can apply it, and as long as you can make achievements, you grow. And that gives you satisfaction, even more so than academia. And this is not to say academia, there's no satisfaction. I'm just saying, these are very stereotypical examples of the differences that you may want to look at when thinking about transitioning. And then in academia, you don't get paid a lot, and this is no secret. If you were paid enough, then ASU would not be on strike right now. And take it from me, I would know because I've also worked as a university lecturer. I've never attended any ASU meeting, but I understand, the grievances and how things are. And I grew up also in an academic house, so I know the concept of, or the topic of pay and how sensitive it is. But when you go back to industry, it's less so about, you get paid more, which is really good. So you worry less about money, but you tend to worry a lot more about, what we call job security. But I wouldn't also worry. I think that whole job security thing is a myth, because there are more people outside academia than there are in academia, and they seem to be doing very okay, right? So like I said earlier in the example, by the time you get to your mid-age, most of your age mates would have jumped through 7 jobs. And in that jump, they make more money, they get more experience, they grow, while you are stuck in one particular line, writing papers. And those papers, you can't take them to the bank, but they are taking real papers to the bank. So it's a matter of interest. But if money is something that motivates you, then you are in the wrong place if you're sticking to academia. And then there are less about work boundaries in academia. I remember teaching a class of 350 or 70 students. And by the time I had left, I think that class had gone up to 700 students. There was no extra incentive for me to grade those students. Work just kept on growing, which meant that after 8 to 4 p.m., I would still be marking student scripts during the weekend. At night, I'll dream of students' assignments. I'll dream of student projects, and the work never ends. And I have never found myself on the hallway walking, seeing the HOD saying, Khalid, you're working too hard, take it easy, take it easy. No. It's can you join this committee? Can you do this? Can you do that? And your salary is not increasing, So work increases, money decreases. It's my experience was different, I'm sure. And I hope yours was different as well. But in industry, you would see that there is this expectation that you set boundaries, and you have to set boundaries. That's how proper work is done. You measure what you can do, you deliver on what you can do, and then you grow. And then I think what is indisputable is that if you in academia, you would be very, very you would experience a lot of slow and disruptive processes. You need to appease a lot of people to grow. That happens everywhere. But also think about how do you get this? How do you get that from the management or from the university system? It takes a while because of all this bureaucracy. Now, and you'd find that in the industry because, how fast you move determines the progress you make. Things are much faster than that. So there are a million reasons I could keep going through. These are just a few examples that came to my mind. And now you have to find your own. You have to sit and say, okay, what's the pain point here? And am I really certain that the interest I have for academia and the reality of the life I want to live, there's a mismatch there. If there is a mismatch there, then you are probably in the wrong place. And if you're in the wrong place, sticking there wouldn't change anything. So the magic word there is transition, move. So where do you transition to? Yeah. and that's the issue here. Now, once you're a master's student, a PhD student, a postdoc, or even a lecturer, the imposter syndrome there it's high because it's hard to see where you can apply the skills you have. And it's not that you do not have the skills. It's more so that maybe the environment does not tell you that you have the skills that can transfer from where you are at the moment to where it could be. So if you knew these skills, if you were very solid about your strengths and your weaknesses, then it's easy to make this transition. A few examples of where you can go to if you're a research student at the moment during masters is a lot of companies we have out there, whether within Nigeria or outside Nigeria, that have research units. You would fit right in, so it will be academia outside academia. It's a different ball game, as you would see with the next speaker. He will describe what I want to assume, I don't know what's in his talk, but I want to assume that he will talk about what happens in situations like that. And there are many companies that have R&D units in there. So that would be one of the interesting transitions in there. It's a different experience and hopefully not too strange from what you're used to. As a lecturer, as a postgraduate student, what you often do is you tend to juggle a lot of, or you tend to manage things, manage budgets, time budgets, and then also deliver within time. Those are the natural skill sets that a project manager has. If you take a project management course, it's no different from what you're doing, except that they have more established processes. So what you need to do is, if you think you enjoy the process of organizing things, you know how to mark 350 scripts in 2 weeks and make no mistakes, then technically you're sort of a project manager, and you can easily transition into being a project manager anywhere you want to be. All you need to do is just get a small paper that says, yes, you can do what you do. Then you could also be an independent researcher. This is not very common, but we've had a lot of them. I think there was the late Bala Usman, Professor Al-Qasim Abba. There's a lot of them out there who were with the university system. They were kind of with the university system, but I'll think of it as a side gig. And they built their own research, independent research group. And what they were doing was they were doing research for, I think, for publications at the time, but they also did research for the government. Until this day, I think they have, I can't remember the name, but there's a name for it. They have a research institute, and that started from independent research. Independent researchers having their own units, and then eventually decided to come together to build one. So you also thrive doing that. And this falls also onto this. Sorry, just a bit distracted there. This also falls into, the writers that we have that are doing research on behalf of others. So maybe a company wants you to do a research on a certain technology, and they reach out to you over the internet, maybe on Fiverr.com, and you help them do a research, write a small white paper and send it over to them. Another transition, since most of you are in computing, is you can jump into software or IT companies. This is the easiest. I have seen a lot more people do that. And within the software or IT companies, if networking or software is your thing, you do not have to be a programmer. You could also be a project manager. You could be a product owner. There's a whole stack of things. You could also be just a chief operations officer. I worked with one in the past, and interestingly, he didn't even have a computing degree. And what he did essentially was to ensure, to a certain extent, that teams worked with each other in harmony. And all he had was just a master's, not just, but a master's. A master's is good. Then also you could be an administrator. So within academia, you could decide to switch from lecturing to becoming a non-academic staff. I know a lot of you think that's a demotion, but it's also a line of work, and many people derive pleasure doing it. So it might be a thing. If you're good in it, switch. Wherever you get that satisfaction, that's where you should go. And it should be your own pinpoint, not what other people say about it. You should be solving your own pinpoint. What excites me the most, and a lot of people don't think about it because we are so tied with the concept of getting salaries from the federal government, is starting your own business. That's a very simple one. You have a lot of skill. You write well. You can do research. You have leadership skills. You could manage projects. You know how to solve problems. To me, that sounds as if you can start your own business. Many people have started theirs without the knowledge you have. And it doesn't have to be that it has to be a computing problem. It could be that, you've just found an area where you could apply your experience to solving a problem. And that's a business, essentially, as long as you're paid for it. And then the last one is you could join politics. And we have a lot of examples here, people finishing their PhDs and becoming directors, ministers. It's also a transition, so think about all of this. Don't fit yourself into a box. Now, I'm coming towards the end of the talk, so we can now talk about sort of the strategic things you need to do. And I'm keeping it high level. So it's not a thing that you do in one day and you transition. Transitioning takes time. So you need to prepare for it. And the first step is to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, and interests. When it comes to strengths, it could be that you're a good programmer, or you simply know how to teach and talk. That's a solid one. Or you know how to deal with people, which is management, or you know how to write, that's also communication. Or you know how to just design, you appreciate good colors and placement of themes. To me, that's a user design thing. Or you like to control how people perceive a situation, that's product management. So you think about all these trends and look for parallels in the industry you're going to. Identify your weaknesses, what upsets you. For example, maybe the moment you hear the word database, you just get really annoyed and you want to beat someone. Think about your interests. Now, this self-awareness exercise will help guide you into evaluating possible industries you could go into. Once you identify these areas that you could dive into, you need to keep your ear to the ground and pay attention to that industry. So you're reading news, you're keeping track, you're trying to learn more about that industry because you are moving there. It's as if you're moving to a different country. If I told you to move from Nigeria to a country that you don't know anything about, the first thing you do is you start learning about that country, right? So this is what I mean here. And then the third step would be start building a network. So start making friends, send messages to people, ask questions, ask people to mentor you because mentors help you become very efficient. They've been through the same process, so they will save you from making the same mistakes they've done. And while doing that, dig into your archives, dig into what you've done in the past and try and make it look nice. What you're doing now, show it to the world. It could be that, you know, you've learned something in Fortran. Nobody uses Fortran in the world anymore, but for some reason in 2022, you've learned something, which is good. Put it out there. It's all packaging, like, you know, we say, so package yourself. Because essentially whomever wants to give you a job wants to see you in a very attractive package. Nobody buys any ugly stuff, you know that. So knowing all of this now, what you need to do is develop a plan and start detaching yourself from your current engagements because you know you're transitioning. This is not the time to take exam officer. This is not the time to read that unnecessary ebook that tells you something very, very niche that wouldn't be useful in your next life. So you're getting away from unnecessary committees, from workloads, yet you are transitioning. So you start identifying things that do not contribute to your future and let them go. They may seem rewarding in the short term because you're getting 10K here, 5K there, but these are the anchors that keep you in academia that you can't escape from. So you need to know within your plan, what are those distractions and move on. And then you have to stay prepared because it's not that, oh, I want to transition. Then in 6 months, the transition happens. No. You could say, I want to transition. And in 2 months, somewhere, someplace, somebody calls you and says, hey, Abubakar, send your CV. So it happens when it happens. So you need to be very prepared. That's my point here. So this is the strategy you follow. Now, what I've seen time without number, and as early as recent as 2 weeks ago, I've had this, is you tell someone who wants to transition to send their CV, or essentially they tell you they're sending their CV for a job, and then they have all this stuff in their CV that tells you that I'm an academic and all I can do is write papers, or I'm an academic and all I can do is lecture. Nobody cares because you're moving to a place where they aren't writing papers, they aren't lecturing. So you need to tailor your CV for the job application. And I'll tell you this secret, it works like magic. Here's your academic CV. It's full of stuff that only academics care about. Here's a job requirement that says we need you to do A, B, C, D. Look at your CV, look at the job requirement, delete all the stuff that is not in here, copy and paste what's in the job application onto your CV, and then change it slightly so that it matches what you have actually done without lying. That is tailoring. That is what you do. And if there's an automated CV check-in system, then you would pass that stage. It works for me all the time. And take it from a chronic transitioner. I transition, and I'm not even ashamed to say it. I just transition. Dr. Zisi will tell you that I'm a master transitioner. So this is something I hold very dear to myself. And because I have to create a million CVs, depending on where I'm transitioning to, whether within companies or within industry, I use tools like Flow CV, which allows me to just duplicate my CV, change one line, duplicate. So I have all these copies of CVs that I know I have sent to a particular place with slight modification so that in case I get called back, I can reuse that. And then get feedback. send your CVs to people that to tell you what stands out, what's unnecessary, what's useless. So the CV, the job of the CV, remember this, is just to get you a call. Once it gets you a call, it shows that you are close to getting the job. The next thing now is beating the interview process. Different jobs will require different interview processes. But if you are applying for a software position or anywhere within, some company, whether it's data science or international thing that requires programming, do not trust your programming skills. Simply go to one of these websites, sign up there, and just follow their exercises, basically. The companies are also there, stealing exercises and sending to job applicants. So you might as well go there and learn from it, right? So take an exercise one day at a time, and hopefully you'll be able to. Oh my God, I'm moving too slow. Okay, so finally, use social networks to your advantage. Following the news all the time on social media is a complete waste of your time. Don't do it. Use it to build networks. Use it to communicate with people. That's how I got my PhD position. And that has helped me a lot in my interviews, because people would say, oh, I've seen you on this, or I've seen you there. So you want to use that to build networks and to help yourself get discovered. But the parting word I have for you here is play to win. I think if you remember nothing, play to win. Ultimately, at the end of your career, when you're 60 years old, you're gray and you're sitting, and people come up to you, nobody's going to ask you, how did you spend the next 60 years? They're like, oh, I was very what do you call it? Loyal to the university system, or, oh no, my dad wants me to do this, so I did that. It's just going to be a bag of regrets you have. Whatever you want to do, just play to win, because it's your career and you should care about it. Thank you. And sorry for going over time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalil, for this wonderful presentation. We surely have learned a lot from it, and I believe the audience have also learned a lot. I think we will delay questions for now, listen to Dr. Sadiq as our next speaker, and then we'll come back later for comments and questions after his 20 minutes presentation. Go ahead, Dr. Sadiq, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, and thanks to the previous speaker, Dr. Khalil, for such a thought-provoking, interesting discussion, and lots of tips there for people wanting to transition. I will just share my screen now. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, because it shows me that it's sharing.
Maybe.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, so yeah, this is sort of the title of my talk. I plan to give a brief overview of what industrial research is like. The previous speaker mentioned industry as a possible destination to transition to. And in industry, of course, there are a number of positions. He's mentioned, transition as a software developer, but there are also research and development positions as well. And I work within applied research in BT. So I will kind of give an overview of, what it is like as an industrial researcher. So okay, yeah, here we go. So this is kind of the outline of my talk. I will give a brief introduction. I would go over why research is important to industry. I will cover some differences between academic research and industrial research. And I would talk a little bit about BT Applied Research, which is where I work and what we do. And then, sort of like some entry requirements for people interested in transitioning to industrial research. And then, of course, kind of give an overview of qualities that would help you succeed as an industrial researcher. So by way of introduction, I guess we all love our definitions, right? But the purpose of this slide isn't really to, just serve or to serve you definitions, but to sort of highlight that when we talk about industrial research, we're really talking about research and innovation. So research I see as, sort of the study part. It's a systematic study of a subject to discover new knowledge. But the value of this to industry is actually the second part, where you actually use that knowledge, those discoveries, to actually create something new, to develop something new, to provide improvements, in terms of improved goods, improved services, improved products. So just bear in mind that when I talk about research, I actually mean research and innovation. So why are these activities of research and innovation important to industry? Well, there are about 7 reasons here, starting from creating unique product offerings to things like reputation, funding, and tax relief. And I will talk about these in detail in the following slides. So when we talk about unique product offerings, if you look at this slide, each one of these products that you see or services are instantly recognizable and they're unique, right? If you took the car here in the top left, it's a Tesla. And if you've ever heard someone who owns a Tesla speak about their car, they say they own a Tesla. They don't say they own a car. They don't say they own an electric car, because a Tesla tends to be in a unique category of its own. And this is a product of research and innovation. Tesla was a game changer. It sort of started this whole mass movement that we currently have of electric vehicles, and it still stands in a class of its own. When we look down here, it's an iPhone. It also started this, it was a game changer when it came out. It completely transitioned, or replaced the old players that we know in the mobile space. And it's still holding on, to that competitive advantage that it started with. When we talk about Uber, we talk about a company that came and changed the way people hail taxis. Completely, again, changed the game. Again, another product of research and innovation, and a unique product in its own right. When we talk about the Google search engine, again, still a unique product. I think most people, when they search online, they just say they Google it. A lot of people, perhaps who use the internet, have never even used another search engine besides Google. So research and development kind of helps companies create these unique product offerings and to create a moat around themselves or those products in a way that allows them to continue to be competitive. The second reason why R&D is important to companies is income. So as at 2022, this is the $1 trillion club. So these are the list of companies that are worth over $1 trillion. And if you look at this whole list, it's full of companies that operate in the IT and tech space. And these are companies that we associate with being highly innovative and highly R&D focused. I think the exceptions being Saudi Aramco and Berkshire Hathaway. But Berkshire Hathaway is a company that owns other companies. And so Berkshire Hathaway, in a way, sort of owns, within the portfolio of Berkshire Hathaway are also companies that are technology companies and very R&D focused. But at the top here, we have Apple, Microsoft, and the usual suspects. So R&D is a way for companies to actually earn massive incomes and to boost their financial standing in the market. Again, R&D gives companies a competitive edge. I've already spoken about Uber. Uber came on the scene in 2015. And we have the New York taxis, which have been in operation for perhaps since the start of the 20th century, so since the early 1900s. But in a span of 4 years, Uber has already replaced them as the dominant player within New York City. So this is again an example of something emerging out of our research and innovation, and completely decimating the competition. I believe we're all aware again of the mobile phone market. In the 90s to the early 2000s, the dominant player was Nokia with 50% of the market. In 2007, the iPhone was released. In 2008, Android was released. And again, within the span of 3 to 4 years, they completely replaced Nokia as the dominant players within this market. We also have BlackBerry, for those people who remember that. BlackBerry was also a significant player, but yeah, by the early 2010, 2011, it had lost market share, and today no longer exists as a dominant player within this market. So R&D and continuous innovation, they can be quite disruptive, and they can give companies who are sort of R&D focused quite a very strong competitive advantage, even against older, more established players with decades of experience within that market. R&D also tends to be quite useful for reputation. These are the top most valuable brands in 2000, at the end of 2021, and again, very much dominated by the companies that we know are very R&D focused. Companies are very innovative. We have Amazon here at the top. Their brand value alone is worth over $683 billion. So this is just the Amazon brand, not the company itself. And we have other examples of here, all of them, most of them being over 100 billion in value, and all of them strongly, very strong in R&D, very innovative companies. So again, there's a lot of funding for R&D. So being industrial R&D, or companies are research focused, they have an opportunity to tap into some of the funding that's available for this. This is these are the top companies in terms of GDP, and this is their GDP expenditure in research and development, so GERD. We have, at the top here, and of course, this is GDP PPP, which is price, purchase, and parity. So we know China is the top country by GDP PPP, and this is the amount that China actually spends in R&D, over 574 billion US dollars. The US spends even more than that. So there's a lot of money that actually companies can tap into. Of course, this is the sum total of expenditure within that economy, not government funding. Government funding is less than that, but still a lot of money. For example, the UK government spends about, has budgeted about, in 2021, about over $14 billion to go into research and development. Research and development also opens opportunities for partnerships. A very good example that we might be aware of is the partnership between BioNTech and Pfizer. BioNTech is a research lab, a much smaller research lab. When the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, they entered into a partnership with Pfizer to develop the COVID-19 vaccine. And that kind of saw the transfer of $748 million from Pfizer to BioNTech. Some in terms of upfront cash payment, others in stock. But this is how much their partnership was worth. And we know the product of that. It was the very effective COVID-19 vaccine, which, as at March 2022, over 327 million doses of that vaccine had been administered. But other examples within tech and IT are, for example, OpenAI. This is an AI research lab in the US. They've received $1 billion in funding from Microsoft, and this in turn has helped Microsoft have a exclusive license to their products. The language models that they create. This is now available as a service on Microsoft's Azure platform. And of course, some of these can take the form of outright acquisition. So Microsoft, of course, acquired DeepMind. DeepMind is another AI lab based here in the UK, and it was acquired by Microsoft in 2014 for the sum of $500 million. And also, companies also, as an incentive, get tax relief for engaging in R&D. I think this is more a European thing. I don't know to what extent it's available outside of Europe. But for example, in the UK, companies can get up to 10% of their corporate taxes for keeping and exploiting commercial IP within the UK. So this is an encouragement for companies to be highly innovative, to do research, to file patents, and the government gives them this tax break if they do so. These, vary from 10% in some of these countries to as high as 13.9% in Italy and 11% in Turkey. So quite a substantial amount of money there, especially if you consider sort of bigger companies that have revenues in billions of dollars. So I would like to next talk about some differences between industrial and academic research. I know part of this has been covered by the previous speaker, but hopefully there's still more here that I would cover that has not been yet, and that has not been covered. So firstly, I would talk about the purpose of the research. In academia, research tends to be done for its sake because academia are motivated by finding new knowledge. This tends to be less the case in industry. The focus in industry definitely tends to be financial. They would expect to get some sort of financial reward back from their R&D activities. Research directions in academia tend to be, in industry, tend to be determined by the strategic interests of the company. So I work within in BT Applied Research. My research has to be within a certain numbers of areas of interest to BT. So in that way, there's perhaps less freedom, if you like. In academia, I think as a researcher, you have a lot of freedom to choose the direction you would like your research to go in. But of course, in industrial research, that tends to be set at a much higher level, and that filters down to the various research groups. Also, in terms of output, academia tends to prioritize publications. In industry, they prioritize patents and application of that R&D. So this leads on to the fourth point, where because of that, in industry, exclusivity and secrecy are highly emphasized. So because they tend to exploit these innovations for commercial use, they're not as willing and as eager to share these findings as people are in academia. So you get fewer papers coming out of industry, and a lot of industries tend to be very, very secretive about what they work on. So again, this might be a game changer for some people who prefer to sort of share their findings, share their research with the world. That would be more something that you would get from academia. One thing also was data. For anyone who's ever worked in academic research, academics are always looking for data. data is always available in industry. In BT, I mean, we generate a lot of data. Data is just one of those byproducts or things that we generate just from our day-to-day operations. And a lot of the research that we are expected to do would be to derive value from that data that we already have available to us. So we wouldn't be going out looking for data. And you find a lot of academic institutions, when they want to partner with industries, a lot of, in many cases, it's that data that they also want to get their hands on. Funding also tends to be available in industry. I mean, industry research tends to be fully costed, whereas academia, they tend to develop the expertise and then they go out looking for funding either from the government or from other companies and organizations. And due to this availability of funding, there's better job security in industry, because, as I mentioned, you know, your research activity is fully costed. They know why they're doing it. They know the financial benefit that they aim to get out of it. So they're willing to put in the resources to hire the people to do the research. And in general, industrial research tends to be better resourced. Whatever you need, the company typically is willing to actually provide this. Lastly, in terms of novelty, again, industry is more focused on trying to solve a problem. So any research that helps to solve the problem is valid research. It's important to them. But you will find, if you've ever worked in academic research, that sometimes that's definitely not where the emphasis lies. Academia likes to see things that are completely new, things that haven't been done before. If you submit papers to conferences or journals, novelty is a very important thing that they look for. Is this new knowledge? Is this a new technique? In academia, less so. It's more, does it solve the problem that we want to solve? So a little overview about BT Applied Research. This was formerly known as BT Labs. It's been at the heart of BT's research since its founding in 1974. So this is, I guess, as a department, it's been going on now 50 years now. But of course, you know, BT is much older than that. As a company, BT's history goes back as far back as the 1800s. Late 1800s. It employs about 280 full-time staff, and it's got partnerships with over 40 universities across the world. And we have associations with 5 global research centers. So these are research centers that BT actually funds, and they do research that's also in line with BT's strategic interests. So we have EPTIC in Abu Dhabi, we have BT China Research Center, we have the BT India Research Center, we have the BT Ireland Innovation Center, and BT MIT in Boston in the United States. So these are just the sort of the research themes within BT Applied Research. As I mentioned, you know, in industry, research tends to be in accordance to the company's strategic interests. BT is a telecommunications company, so you can understand that networks is a huge is an area of huge interest and priority to them. And research that happens within the networks research group tends to be in next generation networks, so 5G, 6G, and stuff like that. But also we have customers, so there's a research group that looks at customer experience, so things like, you know, using, for example, using voice assistants for call centers. I work within cybersecurity and cyber defense, so that's looking at improving the security of our networks and networks of our customers. But BT also provides TV, so some people look into, TV content. There's operational transformation, which is how do we transform BT's internal operations. We have the AI research group, which of course, looks at, how the whole company as a whole adopts artificial intelligence, and then, IoT features, which is the Internet of Things research group. So what do we do on a day-to-day basis? So what's kind of like your job on a day-to-day basis in industrial research? Well, we do investigative research. So this is your trying to stay ahead, within an area. So, for example, as I mentioned, research could be going on in, say, next generation networks, or trying to be at the forefront of AI and machine learning or cybersecurity. We look into things like augmented and virtual reality or robotics, lots of different areas, depending on your research theme. This involves a lot of reading, conferences and stuff, similar stuff that you probably have going on also in academia. But part of our work also is supporting other parts of the business. So this could be technical support. So this is giving our expertise or lending our expertise within research to other parts of the business. Someone might be an AI expert, they lend their expertise to another part of the business. But also downstreaming. In fact, that's a big one, right? So that's taking our research findings, creating a new product out of this, and pushing it down into the business. So you create some new technology, the business adopts this, uses this to gain a competitive advantage. That's a big part of what we do. But there's also knowledge transfer, right? So a lot of this investigative research that we do, we find useful stuff. We can share this with the wider business in terms of reports. Sometimes, like for example, the AI and machine learning, the AI research team, they do a lot of things like data science, short courses to help people, sort of get acquainted with data science and stuff like that. So yeah, knowledge transfer is part of what we do. We handle collaborations. So with those universities and also actually those research and innovation centers that I mentioned that BT actually funds. So we do accept things like internships from universities. We supervise MSc and PhD projects in collaboration with universities. And we also participate in collaborative projects. So these are projects are funded by governments, or in the case of Europe, like EU funded projects, we participate in those. We also have active engagement with the research community. So things like we organize conferences and workshops. Some of us contribute to standards. We publish research papers or white papers that sometimes we make publicly available.
I think we are running short of time, Dr. Sadiq.
Okay, I will try to round up. Yeah, and again, like I said, we do. Technical other technical work. So in terms of entry requirements, if you want to get into industry, postgraduate qualification is not a must. You can get into industrial research with just a bachelor's degree, but certainly having a master's and a PhD are a definite advantage. They would definitely help you, if not get into the company, but they will certainly help you progress your career within applied research or industrial research. Yeah, so there are many ways to get in through graduate schemes and apprenticeships if you are, if all you have is a bachelor's degree, but also advertised positions if you have some experience or have a PhD. And of course, they tend to be open to people with a wide range of from a wide range of technical disciplines. So not just computing, physics, mathematics, all of those they do get in. Yeah, I think just to round up, these are some qualities that I think are necessary or that are very useful if you want to succeed in in industrial research. I will just leave these up. I don't need to go through them. As this has been recorded, you can sort of read through them. but maybe most importantly to mention, you have to have a thirst for knowledge. Your ability to sort of devour research papers, research findings is very important. The more quickly you can do that, the more the quicker you can get those ideas into your research and maybe turn those into something tangible for the business. And that is it from me. Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, also apologies for overrunning slightly.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your presentation. The next aspect of this session is question and answer. Before that though, I will answer a question that keeps recurring here in the chat. Some sent it to me privately, is will they have access to this session? And the answer is yes. The session is recorded. We will upload it on YouTube, and we will get the slides from our presenters and make them available under the description of the video of the session. So yes, you will have access to them. Okay. So if you have a question, you can raise up your hand, and then I'll get you to unmute and ask your question. Or if you want to type it, you could go ahead and type it in the chat, and I'll read it out to the presenters. So before we get our first question, because there's no hand raised yet, Dr. Khalil, I have a question. So could you give us, so you said that someone could transition in from academia to other aspects, other works that are out there. Someone can become a project manager, someone can become a maybe communications expert, and what have you. I don't know if there are some like practical examples of industries. I mean, your experience in the industry and in the entrepreneurship setting, where you see people utilizing a particular skill that they built while working in the academic sector, and which they implement into a different sector, just so people could see something that is realizable and something that is practical.
Yeah, absolutely. There are many examples familiar to both me and as well Dr. Sadiq and Dr. Umar. And off the top of my head, I think the one that you think is less achievable is the writing. So most of us go through masters and PhD, and you learn how to write, and you take that for granted that you can copy from many projects and then rephrase it and then put it into a paper so that it conveys a message. There's a doctor that I know, and her name is Aisha, and she, after her postgraduate school, she was working in a hospital, but for some reason that wasn't palatable enough for the way of life she chose, and she used that writing skill to become an independent researcher / writer. So essentially all she does right now from the comfort of wherever she wants to is to just simply write articles on topics that clients want. And the last conversation I had with her, she told me she gets at least twice more than her salary as a doctor from just doing that alone. So number one, she doesn't have to go on calls all the time. She doesn't have to, be anywhere else. She simply just writes. And I think that's very interesting. There's also another one that who decided to go into, because once you get into academia, what you do is you're trying to persuade people all the time that, oh, my paper is good, my idea is good, this is good, that is good. And he switched into being a project manager, essentially, / product owner. And he works with Samsung at the moment as well, in partnership also on some project that we worked on. But he was previously an academic. So there are many examples, and there is one again also who completely switched, and his pain points from academia and the set of skills being able to discern between, good deals and bad deals has switched into building an enterprise of imports and exports. And maybe he'll be here to give a talk some other time, but Sadiq would be familiar with him. So that's a very successful one, because it may not sound interesting because, he's not writing papers anymore. But what's important is he got all the title up to the PhD, understood what he could offer based on the skills he had, and decided to tailor it into just business and meeting needs. Now, there isn't a lot of data science in what he does at the moment, but in trying to link him up with other professionals, the knowledge he has acquired from academia makes it easy for him to discern between nonsense and sense. And I think that would come in really handy in how he runs his business in the future. But ultimately, it's less so, I think it's less so about the practical example, it's more so about what gives you satisfaction. Academia is just one of many options. So if you feel as if it's not working for you, look around you, you would find a million examples of people. Thank you.
Very much, Doctor.
Yeah.
Dr. Yusuf, any comments?
Well, that's quite incisive presentation. I don't think there's much to add, except for the fact that we people who initially find ourselves with PhD, masters, and we tend to restrict our thought to academia because we think that living in academia, it's something terrible, that it's like a failure on us. It's not. Just if you want to live, just live. There's no problem with that. You shouldn't just box yourself in a corner just because there is this feeling that to your peers you are a failure. You're not. In the industry, like the two speakers have mentioned, we do quite interesting things. You do research at the cutting edge. If you're somebody who wants to do research for the knowledge sake, there are fantastic industrial labs that allows you to do that. Facebook, they do that. They allow you to publish anything you want. They don't care. Google do that. There are a lot of other places they do that. In where I work, they allow you to publish. Only that you don't publish everything, just like Dr. Sadiq said. But you can work on side projects. You can collaborate with any. In fact, I do more collaboration at the industry than I've ever done with when I was at the university. Because if, let's say, you find yourself in a good lab, every academic wants to collaborate because it's easier to get funding when you have alliance with people in industry than when you don't have any. So funding agency, at least in Europe, they tend to pay more for people who collaborate with industry because there is this assumption that the knowledge is readily applicable and readily used in other domains. So I think given our situation, especially in Nigeria, where there have been large production of PhDs, masters, and each and every one of them is looking for a position in academia where it's few and scarce, we should somehow start recalibrating our thought to do something with the knowledge that we have, not necessarily going to academia. So that's probably my only contribution.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf. I think on the same vein, I also know someone who had a PhD in the 80s. He worked in the university, rose to, I think, senior lecturer or thereabout, but then he transitioned to the banking industry and he got up to the level of executive director. And I think he did well for himself. So there are many examples, actually. I asked Dr. Khalil specifically so that we could have more examples so people could see that it's actually possible and they could do it. And okay, go ahead, Dr. Yusuf.
Yeah, we are witness. Three of us are all examples. So there is a living example sitting there. All of us, in one way or the other, had a relationship with university. I was a lecturer in Kano State University at one time, and Kano State Polytechnic. And at the moment, I don't think I have much to do with the university except probably collaboration, nothing special, no relationship. So, and I think fairly life, it's not any different from what you expected in the university. Of course, when we were living, some of us, not everyone. There is this hesitancy of living because it's common. You have a PhD, you want to work. There is this, especially in Nigeria, we believe that you have a PhD, you have to work in academia. In fact, there was a person who asked me, and he's academic, why then do you have a PhD if you'll never work at the university? It's complete. I don't want to use the word, it's too harsh, but it's completely misunderstanding of reality. In the lab where I worked once at the Dell, there were over 270 PhDs. And all of them from all walk of life, from sociologists to physicists to medical doctors, think of profession, you're likely to get a neighbor somewhere in the lab that works on something very interesting. So it's the examples are everywhere. It's just that we were boxed by our friend in academia that when we have a PhD, when we have a master's, we have to do that. It used to be the case when there were abundant positions, when there are few people doing it. But these days, we have to agree that not everyone with PhD would get a position in university. And getting an alternative is not something bad. It's not.
Okay, so there is a question in the comment that says, from Noura Aliyu, he said, Assalamu alaikum, I need more light about BT applied research or documents that might be of help, sir. I think this question is directed to Dr. Sadiq.
Yeah, so I don't know what information in particular the questioner is looking for, but I think you'll find a lot of information if you search for applied research online, or if you went to BT's website. I don't know if there's anything in particular that you're looking for, but yeah, try to look at those sources, and if you can't find anything there, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, you can connect with me, you can probably send me a message if it's something that's public information, I might be able to help you with it.
Thank you, Doctor. I think one area that we haven't mentioned also in this presentation is the fact that one could go into farming. So farming is actually a quite lucrative area I mean, people will always, it's an area, the demand is always there, it's forever there. People will always eat, they will always want food, they would want, you are going into grains or fruits or animal farming. And we actually have a session coming up by 4 o'clock, Ariwa Mentors Forum, and today we're going to talk about poultry farming. One expert in poultry farming will be there to present a session on how to develop that industry. So I think that's one thing also that one could think of. It doesn't have to be technical skills all the way. You could, of course, farming needs some technical skills, but you don't need to have specialized IT skills before you branch into something else. Okay, I think we have exhausted all our questions and we have taken 1 hour, 20 minutes so far. If there are no further comments or questions, then we will close the session at this period. As I have mentioned, the session is recorded. We have a Malik, if you could just share the link to our YouTube page so people could maybe bookmark it, and as soon as the video is ready, we will share it with you there. We'll also get the slides from the presenters, and we'll put a link to get access to the slides. We'll also provide the links to their LinkedIn pages and our LinkedIn pages in case if you want to get in touch with questions or inquiries about what you have had here. Last, we usually organize these sessions every month and we talk about different issues. So keep a date with us. We will share the dates and the topic of our next session soon. Thank you very much for coming, especially to our presenters and my co-convener and the rest of you, and hope to see you soon, inshallah.
Okay, thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.